welcome to the University of Law podcast and to our 24 questions in 2024 series. My name is Jessica Massie. I'm a mental health advisor here at the University of Law. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Meg Kelly, who is currently studying the LLM Legal Practice with us. Welcome and thank you for joining me, Meg. Perhaps you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself a little bit for our listeners?
Thank you, Jess, and thank you for having me. So yes, I'm Meg Kelly. I am currently studying the LLM Legal Practice here at the University of Law, which encompasses the SQE1 and SQE2. And outside of that, I am a director at a legal mentoring charity, which I think I'll talk about a bit later.
So I suppose, just to kind of kick us off with our questions, really, I suppose what kind of first attracted you to pursue a career in law?
Yeah, for sure. I remember first talking about a career in law when I was quite young. I think I was about 11 and we were at school and were asked what we wanted to do with our future. And I said something along the lines of, I want to be a judge. And I'm not sure why that was. I think it was I saw the law as quite an aspirational career or as something that people who are in it are very impressive and well-renowned. So I think in my mind, it just seemed like a good thing to say. But in terms of actually thinking about it more seriously and what attracted me to it later was studying it at A-level and then kind of going into a degree in law, realizing that it's quite academically interesting and challenging and there's so much variety in the law. I think we sort of anticipate law to be the kind of criminal justice system and things like that, but I think there's so much of a broader scope. So I think actually witnessing it in real life and spending time having some legal work experience and things like that definitely set me on the path. It was something I definitely wasn't sure about when I started, but now I'm very glad that I worked that out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And these things take a little bit of time to figure out, don't they? But I mean, is there anything in particular that's, sort of any areas of law that have interested you the most during your studies, or is there anything in particular that you enjoy the most about this course?
Yeah, for sure. I think during university, the things that I was interested in academically were quite different to the things I was interested in professionally. So I definitely enjoyed the kind of academic side of things like human rights law and criminal law. The kind of theory behind those I found really, really interesting academically. But more professionally, when I was looking towards my future, I was definitely more interested in sort of commercial and corporate matters, which led me to do vacation schemes and so on, and to get a training contract at my firm. So those sort of areas sort of drew themselves to me, I think, because they had a sort of commercial element or a more businessy element alongside the law. So I found them quite practically interesting or challenging and more gritty than perhaps I found the academic side of other subjects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I definitely will ask you some more about that about the kind of training contract, the vacation scheme. But I suppose my next question at the moment is, why did you decide in particular the LLM legal practice with the SQE1 and 2 as opposed to a different course?
Yeah, so I guess there's two answers to this in the sense that because I'm lucky enough to have secured a training contract, I am funded through the LLM legal practice. So in one sense, it wasn't entirely my choice, but I think it's something that I probably would have chosen for myself anyway. And I know a lot of other students do, because it just gives you a bit of a broader scope than simply sitting the SQE1 and 2 exams. And I think without having that preparatory teaching, I probably would have struggled more through those exams. But also the SQE Plus gives you sort of elective modules at the end, which gives you more specifically tailored practice areas. So for whatever you're most interested in or whatever is most suited to your career. So for example, I'm studying things like debt finance and mergers and acquisitions, which are very specialist and you just don't get if you take the SQE exams on their own. So I think that's been really interesting and beneficial for me.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a really insightful point for some of our listeners who are maybe interested in this course, to give a bit more insight into what to expect and what you've gotten out of it so far. So I suppose a bit of a broad question here, but what does a typical day as a law student, look like for you? So could you walk us through a typical day as a student at the university?
Yeah, definitely. I think what I would say about myself is that not every day looks the same. I think I'm quite a sort of sporadic person when it comes to my study, which doesn't work for everyone. I think some people are more in the working 9 to 5 as a 9 to 5 in terms of university. I think for me, it depends on my classes and things like that. But usually get up at a reasonable time in the morning, get into uni, try and study before a class. If I have classes, then into class, and back out at the end. I think what's really useful for me about certainly the course I'm on, and I think other subjects at the university, is the structure of the way the course is laid out, so that there is prepare tasks, which you do in advance of the class, engage tasks within the class, and then a consolidation afterwards. And I think that structure really helps me to get in the mindset of getting ready for a subject, engaging with it, and then afterwards like refreshing my learning and making sure that I understand where I'm at. So that's really good. So I think sort of towards the start of the week is more work on those preparing tasks, and then at the end is more on the sort of consolidation end of things. But I think it's just trying to, I think a 9 to 5 is a good way to structure things in terms of the amount of hours, but whether you spread that out in the week differently, I think is up to you. And for me, it's something that I do a bit differently based on other commitments and things like that.
Yeah, and I think again that's another insightful point for anyone who's maybe considering this course, is that we understand within the university that a lot of our students have different commitments. They maybe learn in different ways, and there's a lot of different factors at play when somebody is studying. So everybody might approach their course a little bit differently, but like you say, there's maybe general advice that we can offer students on how to maybe try and study and focus effectively to the best that they can.
Yes.
Thank you. That was really insightful. So just circling back to what you mentioned about the vacation scheme, love to hear a bit more about that. So if you could tell us about your experience on the Whale Gottschall and Manges LLP vacation scheme and how that led to receiving an offer of employment.
Yeah, so I think when we mentioned earlier about my pursuing a career in law and what attracted me to that, I think there were points in my journey where I was quite unsure about whether I wanted to be a lawyer or not. So I think later I'll probably mention about other experiences that I had as well. But I was very lucky in my first year to receive an offer for a first year scheme at Weil, which was a fast track scheme. So it meant that at the end of that scheme, I was interviewed for a vacation scheme, which is a bit of a non-traditional route into the vacation scheme that not every firm offers. But I had a really good time on both that first year scheme and the vacation scheme. In the vacation scheme itself, I was sat in their disputes department. I had a supervisor and a buddy who were both very supportive and very helpful. And the other members of the team and partners also were very helpful. I was able to meet a lot of different people in the firm for coffees and chats, just to kind of understand the scope of everything that they did. And I think that's something I'd recommend if anyone has a vacation scheme or something that they're looking forward to, or if there's sort of internships and things coming up, is to try and get as involved as you can and to meet as many people as possible. I think that you'll probably be given work by supervisors and things like that, but it's also important just to get to grips with what's going on in the firm as a whole. And I think that definitely helped me in getting my offer. I guess in getting my offer, there's only so much I can do in terms of knowing what actually got me the final offer. I think it's mostly speculation on my part, but I think something that people often forget when they're quite stressed is to be very nice, to be kind and courteous, and to make the effort with people, especially when you're in quite a high stress environment or a high stress situation. You know, for example, if you're going up for an interview or something like that, you know, thanking the reception staff who've showed you the room where you're supposed to be going, or making the time to appreciate someone giving you feedback on a particular task. I think that's just so important. And people want to work with people. A law firm is a people business. So if you can do that, I think that makes a huge, huge difference. And that's probably one of the things that helped me get that offer in the end.
And that's another really good point. And, you know, as somebody who is a mental health professional, a lot of what I encourage people to do is to have that focus on your mental health and well-being. But that also means looking out for other people and, you know, looking out for your peers and your colleagues. And so I really like that point you made about, you know, getting more experience of networking and being within a corporate environment. You know, we're all when anyone that's working in a corporate environment can feel stress, you know, and anxiety, and it can feel like a lot. So actually looking out for your colleagues and having, you know, taking the time to check in with each other is really, really important. So I think that's a lovely bit of advice that you've shared there. So thinking about these internships. So we know that you've done a few internships and work experience placements during your studies, including a summer internship at PwC and the spring program at Goldman Sachs. So how did you find these placements? And what would be your advice for those currently looking for work experience within that kind of similar role?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I said, with my uncertainty about pursuing a career in law, I think what also comes with that, and a trait that I think is useful for a lot of aspiring lawyers or any really aspiring professionals, is curiosity. I think there's so much that can be learned from such a variety of different places. And so when I was trying to work out what I wanted to do, I was basically applying to everything I could. And that will not work for everyone. And if you don't have the time, don't do that. Like, you should be quite selective if you can. But I think I found these placements really insightful. They were really interesting. And again, the people that I was working with were really supportive and very helpful. I was able to learn a lot about the inner workings of these businesses and the kind of work that I could be doing there. And ultimately, sometimes a work experience that you do can be really interesting and informative, but can also inform you that it's not the place you want to be, or that it's not the work you want to be doing. So I really enjoyed my work at these places, but it wasn't perfect for me. And I think that was what kind of solidified my decision to go into law.
Okay.
In terms of people looking for, sorry.
No, carry on, sorry.
Okay, sorry. In terms of people kind of looking for these sorts of work experience and things, I think really the best thing is that Google is so accessible. You can really just type in work placements or work experiences in your year of university or for a graduate or whatever it is, and just see what works for you. With PwC, I did an entry scheme in my first year as well, which was specifically for women entering the business. And they have a sister program for Black students entering the business. And so if you are in a particular category that firms are looking to hire more of, there might be opportunities for you that might not be available for others. So you can Google those sorts of schemes too. I think websites like Bright Network and SEO London and places like that give a lot of good insights on how to apply to these programs and also what's available. So they might also have things like the deadlines as they roll. As well, social media can be a force for good and bad, but there's lots of people on TikTok and Instagram and things like that who talk about work experience, how to get it, what's available. So I think just using your resources in terms of what's out there on the internet can be really good. And if you can get yourself a mentor or something like that as well, that can really help too.
And I think that's, a theme that I'm hearing there from your answer there is around the importance of as soon as you can, or quite early on if you can, to sort of start that research and to, like you say, maybe follow some of the organizations on social media and perhaps keep up with things using LinkedIn and using Google, so that you're kind of starting that even before you've started maybe those work experience opportunities, finding out things and doing that research before preparing yourself. And and we're the same here at the university. We use social media in a lot of different ways to promote different services internally as well as externally to our students. And like you say, social media has maybe had its downsides in recent years for sure, but there's definitely those elements of it that can be really helpful. Thank you for that. So you mentioned a little bit about mentoring there. Can you explain who Grow Mentoring are and the services that they provide?
Yeah, so Grow Mentoring. So I mentioned at the start that I'm a director in a legal mentoring charity. So Grow Mentoring is that legal mentoring charity. It was founded in 2020 with a mission to essentially help as many aspiring lawyers as possible to have access to their very own mentor and to be able to access what is quite a difficult profession to enter, even for the best of person. And so far, Grow has helped over 10,000 students to be paired with their own mentor. We also run events with different law firms and in-house teams who partner with us to give us mentors and for us to provide them with students, essentially to help them in their journey too. So it's got a bit of a mentoring side and an event side, and we just try and help as many people as possible. I think there's about 30,000 plus people in our social media network now. So it's really exciting, and it's a really good opportunity, I think, to get involved with if you're looking for some support to get into a legal career, or if you have already received a training contract and you are looking to help others. It's just a really good thing to have on the CV, or to, make yourself give back to the community, essentially.
Yeah, and just following on from that, how was it that you in particular got involved with Grow, and what is your specific role there?
Yeah, for sure. So we mentioned earlier about the power of social media. So Grow was founded in, as I said, in 2020, so in the middle of lockdown. And the way that people really found it was through LinkedIn and Instagram. So the way that I got involved with Grow was actually just replying to an Instagram story. They were looking for some more hands on deck to essentially pair a lot of students who there'd been a sudden surge in interest from people looking for a mentor or people looking to mentor. And so I just simply replied to that Instagram story with a little bit about myself, why I was interested in helping. And my role there has kind of shifted and grown over my time. So I've been there, I guess, about 4 years now. I started in operations, which is, as I said, the kind of behind the scenes pairing role. So making the tailored matches between mentors and mentees so they can hopefully have the best relationship possible, helping to manage those relationships and any problems that come up. In January, I stepped into the leadership in this charity. So I'm now the engagement director, which is a bit of a wearing all hats sort of role. In quite a small charity, you end up with everyone doing a lot of different jobs. So I guess my main focus is on engaging with our external partners, but also our internal people. So helping to run internal socials and group gatherings, but also externally trying to get more partners involved and on board, helping people to connect and to really just keep growing as we go.
Yeah. And is there anything in particular or that you would advise? So any advice you would give for students who are looking for mentoring?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different organizations that offer it, which is really brilliant. I think what you should probably think about is being quite specific with what you're looking for in a mentor. I think that there are different people at different stages of their career. So, for example, if you're looking to secure, say, a vacation scheme or an internship in the next cycle, being in your application quite specific about where you're looking to apply to or who specifically you think could help you in terms of where they're at in their journey as well. That can be really helpful. Making it clear your background and trying to find commonalities with someone else. I think something that people also underestimate is LinkedIn in terms of mentoring. I don't think that you have to necessarily have a formal mentoring relationship with someone to get a lot of value from speaking with them. And I think something about a lot of people in law is that people are generally quite happy to talk about themselves and their journey as long as you're willing to really listen and give them time and to make the effort to ask real and genuine questions rather than just sending a cold message. So if you see someone on LinkedIn, for example, who you think is really impressive, who's come from a similar place to you, who you maybe want to get to know, I think it's good to reach out to them and to make that effort as well. But yeah, I think being quite specific with yourself and knowing what you want, but equally knowing that maybe you don't know what you want. So if you're unsure, then, reaching out to someone who's maybe had a variety of different experiences and who might be able to guide you on how they made the decision they came to, that can be helpful too.
That's some really helpful advice. Thank you, Meg. So I suppose I also wanted to ask you a bit about the Expanding Your Horizon event that you recently spoke at, which was all about sort of how and why you should network and creating opportunities for yourself through your connections. What would be your top tip for our listeners who want to expand their horizons?
Yeah, this is a tricky one because I think there's so many things that you can possibly do to network. I think there's just, for example, even the university, there's so many opportunities to network. There's events like that. There's things within your own class. I think, honestly, it's just being willing to talk to people and to meet people in whatever setting you come into, whether that's in the classroom or whether that's on something like LinkedIn, or even going to a specific networking event. I think it's being open and willing to have those conversations. And even if you're feeling a bit nervous or a bit worried, just to be willing to push yourself a little bit. It's something that I definitely struggled with in the start. And I do think that networking is a skill. So I think any opportunity that you can get to put yourself out there a little bit, it just slowly breaks that barrier and that ice. And suddenly you're able to go into a room full of people and insert yourself into a conversation with different people and make that energy and that effort. I think that's as best you can do. So I think just getting started, really.
Yeah, no, again, another really good tip. Thank you. And I suppose just changing it up slightly, what I would like to kind of hear from you about is the support services at the university, perhaps how they've helped you. So thinking about services like our employability team or well-being and mental health or disability, if there's any services that you've perhaps used, and any again helpful advice you might have for other students or prospective students who maybe want to use those services.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't really personally used the support services at the university very much, but what I think is really good is that they're all very well signposted. So especially things like employability, you get a weekly email of employability things that are coming up. So I have signed up to a few events through newsletters and things like that, but they're also all over the kind of intranet pages in terms of, if you just go onto the My ULaw app, you can see that there's different support things that you can click on and you can learn about, and there's different learnings to be taken from that. I think because my examinations so far have all been external to the university, I've used their sort of equivalent wellbeing services in terms of disclosing disabilities and things like that for the SQE. But I know that I've heard that the university has really good services for things like wellbeing and disability and things like that. So I know it's something that can be accessed quite easily and quite readily. And if it's something that I needed, I'd be very comfortable to talk to. So if it's something that you think would be beneficial, then I would definitely recommend to any students at the university to reach out and to find those pages. I think they're quite easily and readily accessible. So that's really positive.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thanks, Meg. And as somebody who, works within support services in the university, I can confirm that that's, it's often a big task for us, is making sure that we're putting the word out there and we're making those services accessible. So for example, if you're needing to get wellbeing support, you can just go onto the Elite page for the kind of wellbeing advisors and find all their contact details there. You can also, use, as like you say, there's also the ULaw Wellbeing app, which has loads of tools in mental health and wellbeing kind of advice and updates. Also, speaking to your academic coach and letting them know if you're maybe struggling with something, or just if you need a bit more support with something. So whether that's to do with employability and careers, whether that's some advice around housing, money, accommodation, down to as well mental health and wellbeing. So yeah, I definitely, it's really important to access those services. And even if you're unsure if they can, if they're right for you, if they can help you, just go out and ask that question. There's no harm in doing that, and just to find out a bit more information if you think, well, look, I think this service might be helpful for me, but I'm not sure because I've not utilized services, support services before. So yeah, we just encourage, whether, you have a diagnosis of something, whether you don't, whether there's a pressing issue, whether it's actually just wanting to find out a bit more, just make that contact with us and we're here to support you. So, well, thank you for answering those questions that have been kind of in regard to your course and so on. Now, would just like to go through some sort of quick fire questions, just ones that are a bit more fun, if that's okay. So what if you could change one thing in the world? What would it be?
Yeah, this one is so hard because there's so many things you could do. The answer that I have is world peace, which I think is a pretty terrible answer in the sense that it's not really a singular action. It's probably not something I could do on my own. But if I could, then world peace would definitely be my answer.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer as well, definitely. So, yeah, no, I agree with you. There's a lot that goes into that, but certainly I think that's certainly something we all hope for. But what about if you're hosting a dinner party? Name 3 guests, sort of dead or alive, that you would like to invite and why.
Okay, so I would invite Lady Hale, Jane Austen, and my mum. And I think this is an interesting combo. I only just realized it's 3 women as well, actually. Lady Hale, I actually had the pleasure of meeting at my previous university for a brief talk. And I just think she's an incredible woman who is a brilliant example of what it means to be a lawyer and to come from quite a background that people wouldn't expect you to go into law and to do amazing things. And so she really inspires me to do what I do and to keep going. Mm-hmm. Jane Austen, I just love her writing and I think she's brilliant. And I would love to pick her brains about everything that she wrote and why she wrote it. And I think that'd be brilliant. And my mum, because she's also one of my biggest inspirations. And I think she'd also love to meet Jane Austen. So I think it'd be quite a nice conversation, probably an afternoon tea over a dinner party. But I think it'd be lovely.
Yeah, no, that sounds lovely. And like you say, you're doing something for your mum and that as well. That's lovely. And what about your favorite movie?
This one, I hate
So
these sorts of
hard,
questions
isn't it?
because I think it's so hard to reduce yourself to one movie. But I think I recently saw the new Inside Out film, Inside Out, I think it's Inside Out 2. And I love Disney movies and Pixar movies. I think they're brilliant. And I think they narrow kind of quite adult topics into kind of
Yeah.
more childish terms. And I think especially with the new Inside Out, it brings in a lot of things about growing up and mental health and things like that. So I thought it was a really beautiful movie. And I really enjoyed that. So probably that at the moment, but all time, I definitely don't have one.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I love a Disney film. I love a Pixar film. And as you mentioned, I think in sort of recent years, maybe more so than when we were younger, these kind of films are actually really touching on kind of quite relevant sort of modern affairs, and and things to do with mental health and well-being and the state of the world as it is. So it's nice to see that these films are actually kind of capturing that for younger audiences. So I definitely agree with you. Moana is personally my favorite.
Oh, I
um
love
it's great, isn't it? The songs are lovely. And what about your favorite way to kind of relax? Do you have anything in particular, or maybe like a self-care activity that helps you kind of switch off in the evenings, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit more general, but I think just generally being around friends, whether that's even watching a movie or going to a park, having a picnic, just chatting. I think something about university for me is that sometimes I think it feels quite isolating, especially in exam seasons. You're quite
Yeah.
internally focused and it's very go, 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 but you're kind of sat at a desk on your own. And so having time to relax for me is kind of more social than maybe for some other people. But equally in busier times, maybe it is more internally focused watching a movie by myself rather than with my friends. But I think generally friends is my favorite way to relax.
Yeah, and I think, as somebody that is a mental health professional, sometimes when I'm working with somebody who maybe has a really busy schedule, they're working, they're studying, and as we know, as we've discussed in this podcast, a law degree and what goes along with that can take up so much time. So sometimes when I'm working with someone, we can identify that actually, they're not really taking any time for self-care and relaxation. It's just work, eat, sleep, that sort of cycle. And then sometimes actually identifying just those, what on paper might seem like a minor thing, like taking some time to check in with a friend and go and meet with them, actually, switching off your phone and your laptop a good hour before, before you want to wind down, so you can really just step away from the screens for a bit, things like that, that can have a big impact on your well-being, but we just forget to do when we're so busy and so stressed with things. So yeah, I would agree. Socializing and just some me time is really important. And so what about if you were stranded on sort of like a desert island? You could only take 3 items. What would they be?
Yeah, I'm yet to narrow down this list. I think it's quite a long list. And
Yeah.
I think my main issue is the fact that the desert island probably doesn't have anywhere to charge my phone. So it would be kind of useless to bring a phone. So in that case, it would probably be two very good books and some sort of never-ending supply of water so that I don't die. But I'm not sure exactly. But yeah, I think a good book would probably be very helpful as one of those items.
Yeah, definitely. I think something that doesn't, like you say, doesn't require charge or electricity, because anytime whenever I think of this question, I always think of things that do. Your mind just goes to that because that's what we're used to in this, in this day and age. So but yeah, and also I would just need my facial moisturizer that has SPF in it,
Yeah.
or I think I would, yeah, that is honestly the first thing that came to my mind, which I found really funny because you just get so used to using that every day, don't you?
Yeah, no,
um,
exactly.
yeah, and what about your favorite place to travel to? Is there anywhere in particular you've been that kind of tops the list for you?
Yeah, actually, last summer I was really lucky to do a legal aid placement in St. Lucia in the Caribbean. And
Wow.
that is truly one of the most like awe-droppingly like just gorgeous places that I've probably
Yeah.
ever been in my life. I think it's somewhere that I would potentially never get to go to again. So it was a really
Yeah.
it was a really wonderful opportunity. And yeah, just such a gorgeous place, like the bluest seas you have ever seen, and the
Wow.
brightest skies. But yeah, I think the problem with me is, as you said, the SPF was very, very necessary, and I think I would struggle to do
Yeah.
it long term. Oh, the heat was heat.
Yeah, no, I one of my favorite places I've been to was Sicily, and I went for the first time last year, and we went during the week that there was a heat wave. So it was already, it was already in the height of summer, but we were hitting about 45 degrees, and
Yikes.
most people weren't coping, but I quite like that level of heat. I'm a bit different like that. um, and what about, is there anyone in particular that you admire the most, and why?
Yeah, again, there's so many really cool people in the world right now, and also gone before us, I suppose. I think I said about Lady Hell in my dinner party list. I'd probably say about her now as well. I think, especially just career-wise, someone that I really look up to. So someone that really paved the way for a lot of women to get into very senior positions in law, especially herself having a family and things like that. People who aspire to be multiple things at once. She's a very good person, evidence that you can juggle a lot of different things and still be a really impressive person career-wise. So yeah, really, really appreciate her story, and I think she's a brilliant woman.
Yeah, definitely. And so finally, for these questions, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Yeah, I think 18-year-old me was quite nervous about starting university and really entering the world, and she did not know what she wanted to do. And so I think the biggest thing, I guess there are two pieces of advice, but the first thing is to be curious and to try different things. I think there's so much out there, and if you have the time and if you have the energy, then it can be really fun and you can meet so many different people and learn a lot about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the second thing is to do things scared, or do things nervous, do things in whatever state you are at the time. I think I found myself holding out of so many things because I was nervous or worried, but that meant that I maybe missed out on opportunities that would have been the best possible thing for me. So I think even when I was stepping into events, when I was feeling quite apprehensive or nervous, I didn't know anyone in the room, I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. Brilliant things came out of that in the end and got me to be on a podcast like this, for example. So I think do things however you are, come forth as yourself, and I think that will bring you the things that are supposed to come to you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really nice couple of points you made there. And I think for me, it kind of ties into, I suppose, what you were saying. For me, it would be about not putting as much pressure on yourself, because as somebody who is almost 10 years from 18-year-old me, I think in that time, I've really surprised myself when I look back at how much things maybe did work out, and how much, as like you say, I was maybe worried about something, or anxious about something, and how actually, I may have taken the long route. I may not have done things in a traditional way here and there. Everyone's journey is different, but where you wouldn't be where you are now if you didn't take those turns, and things didn't maybe go a little bit not to plan at times. So I think it's really important to try and relieve some of that pressure on yourself. We're all only human, and we're all doing this thing called life. We might not always, as I say, we might go and do that in different journeys and in different ways, but it's so important to go easy on yourself and enjoy things whilst you're also putting in that hard work, and I think that comes back to like what we were saying about the importance of relaxation and self-care, and looking after yourself, because it's very important. But I mean, that's our questions today. I mean, thank you so much for joining me, Meg, and sharing your story. And thank you to our listeners, to those of you who have tuned into this podcast. This has been really insightful. And if you'd like to find out more about our courses, please visit our website, law.ac.uk, and do follow and subscribe to our podcast so that you don't miss out on our next episode. Thanks, everyone.